A very good evening. This is Avinindra Som and you're listening to the news roundup of the day on Gold FM. For Sri Lanka's export-driven economy, today marks a significant shift in the trade landscape with the US. Following the US Supreme Court's decision to invalidate a previous national security tariff, the Trump administration has pivoted to an alternate legal mechanism, Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. The new presidential proclamation imposes a 10% ad valorem duty across the board on imported articles from every country for a period of 150 days. Now, while this represents a level playing field compared to the earlier country-specific penalties, it introduces a fresh set of competitive pressures for Sri Lankan manufacturers. Dhammika Fernando, representing the Free Trade Zone Manufacturers Association, explains how this legal maneuver came to be and what it means for Sri Lanka's specialized export basket.
The Supreme Court of the United States has given a determination saying that it is wrong for the President of America to sign that executive order without the approval of the Congress. And by that, this order has been nullified. So the next step President Trump has done is, he has removed that executive order and at the same time has again signed an executive order using another act called Act Section 122 of the Economic Act of the United States, which is also can be used if there is a threat or there is a problem of balance of payment in the United States. So this executive order also can be used only for 150 days, and the president had the prerogative to impose 10% to 15% of duty on imports to the country.
With the 150-day clock ticking, the industry is calling on the government to expedite negotiations with the US Trade Representative or the USTR to secure a long-term bilateral deal that could exempt Sri Lanka from future broad brush surcharges.
Since that original tax regime was imposed, that Sri Lanka has been negotiating with the United States Trade Representative, the USTR, that we call a bilateral trade agreement like some other countries. What I think is it is rather better to expedite this and come to a conclusion with the United States on this bilateral trade agreement as fast as possible. But we have other trading partners also. We can improve our trade and diversify our markets.
Matra Magistrate ordered the remand of former Police Inspector Jagat Nishant of the Colombo Crimes Division until the 5th of next month following his arrest at Katunayake Airport. The suspect was taken into custody upon his return to the island as he had previously fled abroad to evade court proceedings. The magistrate ordered the suspect to appear via video conferencing for the next hearing due to reported threats against his life. The shooting at the W15 hotel on the 31st of December 2023 resulted in the death of a police officer and injuries to another. The incident previously led to the arrest of then IGP Deshabandhu Tennakon and his subsequent removal from office by a parliamentary committee of power transitions. In the meantime, police detained a 42-year-old suspect named Janaka for 90 days under the Prevention of Terrorism Act regarding the double murder of a lawyer and his wife in Akurekoda. He faces charges of aiding and abetting the transport of the gunmen involved in the 13th February attack. Police spokesperson Assistant Superintendent F.U. Wootler confirmed during the cabinet press briefing that 80% of the investigation into the Akurekoda killing is now complete. The central bank's inflation target of 5% does not bode well for a country like Sri Lanka. This is the view expressed by CEO of the think tank Advocata, Dharanath Fernando, in the wake of national inflation figures being released for the month of January yesterday. Overall rate of inflation came in at 2.4%, which is 0.5% down from December, while non-food inflation for January had come down to 3.4% from the previous month's 4.4%. But with the central bank expecting the overall inflation to hit the target at 5% by the beginning of the third quarter of this year, consumers may feel the pinch in several months.
But we need to understand inflation, not a target. Actually, it has to be a ceiling. In my view, 5% inflation target is slightly towards the higher side because inflation is what you dilute the value of the money. So it has kept 5% is for a reason with the debt structure of Sri Lanka and so many other reasons. But in my view, ideally it has to be at about 2%. So with central bank probably missing the target because they are also responsible to keep the inflation at a certain range. But broader point here is that we have the macro framework to keep the inflation actually low and manageable. So in that sense, the central bank not hitting the target is good news rather than exceeding 5%. Because already after the 70% inflation round we had with the crisis, people are even finding it difficult to manage at this level of economic outlook. So what we need to do is, in my view, maybe consider to revise the targets and bring it down, because it seems if the central bank starts actually trying to hit 5% inflation target, it will add more pressure on people with high food prices and of course with diluting the value of the money that they earn. So in that sense, one thing sensible is to revise the target, but it requires some amendments to the Central Bank's Independence Act. But it's a worthwhile consideration if we need to revise the targets or follow according to the Central Bank Independence Act, what is the process afterwards. But definitely inflation has to be single digit in lower territory because that is what is needed for a country to be stable and for the investment climate to be more predictable.
The Advocata CEO is the latest to challenge the central bank's inflation target. Earlier, Dr. W.A. Vijayawardena, a former deputy governor of the central bank, also voiced concerns against 5% inflation.
If we go by the best practice in the rest of the world, the normal target which a country should set for itself is about 2% per annum. And also they can go higher by 1% or lower by 1%. So what it means is that when the prices are rising at that particular level, say 2 to 3%, when the country's productivity level increases by the same level of 2 to 3%, there is no impact on the real purchasing power of the people because the productivity goes up by 3%. Their real income also goes by 3%. So as a result, there is no impact on the people. But the 5% target which the central bank had set is too high for a country like Sri Lanka because it enables the politicians to increase the money supply by say 7% because the inflation rate is 7% and the real economic growth is 5%. They can increase money supply by 12% and finance the budget by borrowing from the banking sector, not for the central bank but for the commercial bank. So therefore, this actually helps a government which is not in a position to finance itself by either raising money through taxation or by borrowing from the non-banking sector to print money and finance its budget. So that is why when the governor, if he wants to renegotiate it with the government of Sri Lanka for a proper inflation target, the government might want to keep the present target of 5 where the inflation rate can be 7% at the maximum or 3% at the lowest level. They might want to do that. But in my view, since the current inflation rate is going at around say 2%, the governor should negotiate for a lower inflation target so that the people will find that their productivity level goes up by 2 to 3% annually generally, and therefore their real wealth level will remain at the same level as before.
In more local news, the Ministry of Energy appointed a 7-member expert committee to calculate financial losses resulting from the importation of substandard coal. The investigation follows reports of technical discrepancies in coal quality testing, where several shipments reportedly failed to meet the required calorific standards, leading to the imposition of a multi-million-dollar penalty on suppliers. Now, in a separate development, the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka is inviting written public comments on a proposed electricity tariff hike until the 18th of March. The Ceylon Electricity Board requested a 13.56% increase for the second quarter of 2026 to bridge an estimated revenue deficit of 15.8 billion rupees. This marks the second proposed tariff revision of the year, with the CEB citing rising operational costs and the need to maintain financial stability within the power sector. National Operation Council of Nations together declared the week starting March 1st as Drug Prevention Week to address the social impact of illicit drug use across the country. The all-share price index of the Colombo Stock Exchange closed at 23,690.62 after declining by 92.40 points. The S&P SL 20 index ended at 6,681.12 points, following a 47.59 point decline. Turnover totaled 3.6 billion rupees. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was evacuated from the lodge in Canberra for several hours after a suspected bomb threat. The Australian Federal Police moved him to a secure location while specialist officers searched the property. Police later confirmed nothing suspicious was found and there was no ongoing threat to the public. Robert Carradine, the US actor best known for his roles in The Revenge of the Nerds and The Lizzie McGuire, has died aged 71. West Indies moved closer to the 2026 T20 World Cup title after crushing Zimbabwe by 107 runs at the Wankhede Stadium. Shimron Hetmyer and Roman Powell spearheaded a brutal batting display, propelling their side to a massive 254 for 6. This total stands as the second highest in the history of the tournament, featuring a record-breaking 19 sixers in a single innings. Hetmyer dominated the Zimbabwean spin attack, reaching her half-century in just 19 balls to set a new national record. Despite being dropped twice, he contributed 85 runs before Powell took over the momentum with a 29-ball 50. Now in the encounter between Pakistan and England at Pallekele, Pakistan at the end of 20 overs was 164 runs for the loss of 9 wickets. And that's all the news for now. Stay tuned to Gold FM for the latest updates. This is Avinindra Soma for Gold FM News. Have a great evening.